What's good? It's Woog. Emmanuel Navarrete just defeated Oscar Valdez via unanimous decision to retain his WBO super featherweight title. And this fight was expected to have fight of the year potential. And in terms of the action and some of the drama, that's exactly what we got in this one. Now, I had picked Oscar Valdez to stop Emmanuel Navarrete late. We knew that Navarrete was going to be an absolute handful offensively. What I was wondering was, in light of how Navarrete looked against Liam Wilson in his 130-pound debut, would Navarrete be able to take Oscar Valdez's hard counterpunches, specifically that left hook? Basically, could Navarrete's chin hold up against Oscar Valdez's punches? Because we knew that at some point Navarrete was going to be running into big, clean shots unless he was going to totally rearrange his entire style and game plan for this Valdez fight. Nobody expected that. We all expected Navarrete to fight like Navarrete, which, yes, it is an absolute avalanche and a treadmill from hell, but it also leaves him very vulnerable to counterpunches. I mean, his chin is out there. He's over his skis. He doesn't have traditionally good footwork. Like, he's often off balance and out of position, but he's almost always throwing punches. So was this like a fight of the year? And when I think about that, there are a few different components. One is the action, two is the competitiveness of the fight. But if you look at the actual judges' scorecards, this fight was, I believe, 116 to 112. That's 8 rounds to 4 on one judge's scorecard. And then the other two scorecards had it like 118, 108. That's 10 rounds to 2. And even 119 to 109. That's 11 rounds to 1. So in that regard, no, this couldn't have been like a fight of the year. It just wasn't round by round competitive enough. But this fight was a little bit of an anomaly in that these were very competitive rounds, and Navarrete did have the downpour of activity, but Oscar Valdez, man, like, he started to kind of tighten up his defense in the 5th through, I would say, 9th rounds, to where he started winning some of those rounds because, you know, like the unofficial scorecard, I think it was Mark Kriegel, had Navarrete winning the first 4 rounds, and then he gave the 5th to Oscar Valdez. I think Boxing Scene had all 5 of the first rounds, the first 5 rounds, all to Navarrete. And I mean, it was already looking like Valdez was going to have to account for this activity from Navarrete. But Valdez was hitting Navarrete hard from the opening round. But Navarrete, I mean, he had Valdez backed up against the ropes by the end of the first round, to where the broadcasters felt like Valdez was hurt or maybe even in trouble. So this was high octane action from the first round on. So again, in that regard, it does qualify as a fight of the year candidate. And then if you look at the adjustments Valdez made in the middle rounds, where again, he started, you know, moving better with his feet, athletically, kind of moving and making Navarrete miss. Like, I mean, I saw Navarrete try to throw like 3 left uppercuts in a row, and I mean, they were all missing, like, substantially, because Valdez would move, but you would just see the trajectory on Navarrete's shots, and it's like, damn, no, you don't want to get caught with any of those uppercuts or any of those scooping left hands to the body or up top, or any of those kind of right hand overhand looping shots. And sometimes Navarrete would throw like a 1-2 or a 1-2-3, where he's putting the 2 like right behind the 1, almost like he's throwing both punches at the same time, nearly the same time. Like, he'll throw one and then the second one over the top. And it's like, even if you have a scheme or a strategy in countering those shots, you just can't account for that many shots. Like, you would have thought that maybe Oscar Valdez's hard, crisp, dangerous counterpunching was going to nullify some of Navarrete's activity. It simply didn't. Now, Navarrete, and this increased the drama, hurt his hand visibly and, you know, audibly. You could hear him in the corner talking to his brother, Pedro, I believe, and acknowledging, my right hand is hurt. and you can see him shaking the hand out. And Navarrete has hurt his hand in several fights. Like, if you look at the way that he finished Isaac Dogboe in their rematch, he was like shaking the right hand out and then throwing it another 3 or 4 times until he finished the job, basically. So at the end of the 9th round, it was looking like, oh man, we don't know what to expect heading into this 10th through 12, because Navarrete has visibly hurt his right hand. Oscar Valdez has won majority of like the last 3 rounds. So Oscar Valdez started looking like he was mounting a comeback. Again, the official judges' scorecards don't reflect this, but a lot of other people's scorecards, including Mark Kriegel's, did reflect the increased competitiveness round over round through those middle rounds. So after the 9th, you got Navarrete in the corner acknowledging that his right hand is hurt. You started to see him use it less, and you started to see Oscar Valdez start to counter a lot more cleanly. And then what happens? In the 10th round, Navarrete throws 128 punches. So Navarrete was throwing like 100 punches or near that for many of the first few rounds. And then again, in the most critical moment where it looks like the pendulum has swung in Valdez's direction after the 9th round, he comes out again, and in the 10th round throws 128 punches. Unbelievable. And yes, many of those were with the right hand. They weren't all full strength, but he was putting it out there, and he was throwing overhands, underhands, all kinds of, just the full array, the assortment of punches that Navarrete throws. And to his credit, Navarrete's chin did, over the course of 12 rounds, hold up against many hard Valdez counterpunches, and many were with those left hooks. Navarrete was getting hit, but he held up, and he was able to, he was durable enough to do it. Like, he looked a lot better taking Valdez's punches than he did taking Liam Wilson's punches. Oh man, this was a barn burner. And again, the judges' scorecards don't reflect the competitive nature of this fight. And also, you had Valdez's eye just swelling up to where by the end of the fight, it was swollen shut. You know, you saw him bleeding after the fight, you know, like, because he had the cut, and then it started to swell, and it started to puff up to the point where it was closed. Again, by like the 11th and 12th rounds, it was closed. And then by the time they're doing the post-fight interview, you see that Valdez is bleeding, and the cut is opened up. But again, his eye was super puffed up, and Navarrete won not only that 10th round where he threw the 128 punches, but he won the 11th round and the 12th round with a bad hand. I mean, you want to talk about having to dig deep in this one. It's not that Oscar Valdez didn't bring it. He brought it, and he was pretty crisp. He had his high guard up, but I mean, Navarrete's style of punches just split the guard, go around the guard. He's just throwing from too many angles for your high guard to be that effective. No, Oscar Valdez had to kind of jump back and jump to the side laterally to get out of the way of a lot of these Navarrete attacks. If he was just kind of step and sliding, it wasn't going to work. Navarrete was going to hit him with maybe like 2 out of 5 punches or 3 out of 6 punches, because that's how wild and varied these combinations are from Navarrete. You know, I said it before the fight, but Navarrete has one of the more unusual styles I've ever seen in the ring. He's, you know, ever since those back-to-back fights against Dogboe, Navarrete, to me, fight over fight, has been one of the must-see fighters in the sport. Super fun to watch just because of how unusual his style is and how much that treadmill from hell wears on his opponents to where it looks like an absolute nightmare trying to fight this guy. But again, I thought that at some point Valdez's catching Navarrete cleanly was going to wobble, drop, and possibly stop Navarrete. And again, Oscar Valdez, in my estimation, fought a good fight. Navarrete just had arguably the best performance of his career. I mean, those Dogboe performances were tremendous as well as a few other Navarrete fights. He has kind of like a sneaky high knockout ratio too. Usually when you've got somebody who's a super voluminous puncher, unless it's like Antonio Margarito or somebody like that, usually volume punchers don't have that high a knockout percentage. But no, Navarrete is stopping most of his opponents. I think the last 2 fights that he had that went the distance were against Joet Gonzalez a few fights ago, and then this latest fight against Oscar Valdez, who is an extremely durable fighter. But, you know, I was wondering in a few moments, is Navarrete going to stop Oscar Valdez? And I also wonder, just because of how cleanly Valdez was catching, and we know how hard Valdez hits, that Valdez was catching Navarrete lunging in sometimes. It's not just that he was catching him cleanly, it's that usually, even if you're not a wicked hard power puncher, when the guy is jumping in and gets caught coming in, I mean, you could get dropped by a relatively soft punch if you are adding to the velocity because you're coming into the opponent. Think Roy Jones dropping Felix Trinidad with a jab, because Trinidad was coming in. Roy Jones stuck the jab out, put Trinidad on his butt with a jab, because again, you are kind of doing some of the power punching work for your opponent when you're moving in and getting caught cleanly. But no, Valdez wasn't able to drop Navarrete, wasn't able to noticeably, visibly hurt Navarrete. Now, I'm sure like Navarrete was getting hurt in a lot of these moments, and their faces look like they clashed a few times. Like you can see Navarrete continuously kind of pawing at his nose, but man, Navarrete's a tough dude. He just bites down on the mouthpiece, and you see like this look on his face where it's like he's just blocking out whatever pain he's feeling, whether it's in his hand, whether it's in his face, or to the body, because Valdez did some quality work to the body as well. But Navarrete wasn't showing the pain. Not only in the fact that his face doesn't flare up like Valdez's face shows the wear, you know what I mean? It shows the abuse. But Navarrete's face not only doesn't bruise, but he's also totally expressionless when it comes to absorbing the punishment and continuing to come forward and just impose his strategy on his opponents. It's pretty unbelievable. Watch Navarrete versus Valdez if you haven't. Again, whether this is a fight of the year depends on how you qualify fight of the year. 11 rounds to 1 on the scorecards, that is not fight of the year. 10 rounds to 2, same thing. But if you watch the action and just look at the possibility and just the idea that Valdez is throwing these punches pretty damn quickly. Like Valdez, I thought, had a hand speed advantage over Navarrete. So he was throwing some straight, nicely timed right hands as well. Like Valdez wasn't just a left hand dominant fighter here. He was catching Navarrete with the left and with the right. Quick punches too. And was also jabbing pretty nicely. And that was another thing that I thought was underrated about Valdez coming into this fight, was his improving jab. Like you can see how Valdez was largely winning that fight against Blue Nose Adam Lopez with the jab, given how Adam Lopez was moving around the ring a lot more than expected. He was like fighting almost like a Robson Conceição style fight against Oscar Valdez. So Valdez had to use his jab a lot more frequently against Adam Lopez. But Valdez, in the opening round was catching Navarrete coming in, and he caught Navarrete with that jab. It's just that, if you weren't going to drop this guy, or you couldn't knock him out or do something or drop him multiple times, it was going to be very hard for Oscar Valdez to win enough rounds in this fight to win the damn fight. Because I'm sorry, you're competing against a guy who's got hard, not just volume, but hard volume, is able to, absorb your punches, and was also able to throw about 100 punches around. It's just tough sledding if you're trying to win a decision against somebody like that, if you're not able to control the pace. Like, if you couldn't slow down his activity, his being Navarrete's activity, you weren't going to win this one. It would take like a Shakur Stevenson type of pace control, or Devin Haney type of pace control to beat a guy like Navarrete, unless you just knock him clean out. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on Navarrete versus Oscar Valdez. I would love to see Navarrete fight against anybody from the WBC champ in the division, O'Shaquie Foster, to I believe, the IBF champ, Joe Cordina, who's now got back-to-back wins over Ogawa via knockout, and against Shavkat Rakhimov, and he beat the hell out of Rakhimov. Took a lot of punishment against Joe Cordina. So yeah, I would like to see Navarrete against either one of those guys. Truthfully, I was mad that Navarrete left the featherweight division, because I would have loved to have seen him fight Robesi Ramirez, or any one of these guys, Ray Vargas on the PBC side, or Lee Wood, Mauricio Lara. Like, there are a lot of fun fights you could have made with Emmanuel Navarrete. I mean, Gary Russell, I don't know if he's ever going to come back. I saw his brother fight on that Emmanuel Rodriguez versus Melvin Lopez undercard, Gary Antoine Russell at 140. He's looking like a problem. Now he's beaten an aging Victor Postal. He just beat Rancis Barthélemy, and now he just stopped Kent Cruz in the first round. But yeah, Navarrete now at 130. I'd like to see him fight Foster, Cordina, and shoot, I'd like to see him fight Hector Garcia, the current, what is he, the WBA champion right now, because Navarrete's WBO. So yeah, Hector Garcia, the guy who fought Gervonta Davis before Davis fought Ryan Garcia. Hector Garcia, who, you know, just beat the hell out of Chris Colbert and then won a competitive fight against Roger Gutierrez. Hector Garcia is very impressive. I want to see him return to the ring because I don't think he's fought since that stoppage loss against Gervonta Davis. But yeah, there are a lot of options for Navarrete. You know, I was very skeptical how his fight style was going to translate to this 130-pound division, because it's one thing if you're throwing 100+ punches around and you're a 122 guy or a 126 guy with an Errol Spence length reach, 72-inch reach at 122 or 126. He was just a physical anomaly, and couple that with his fight style, oh my God, it was a handful for his opponents. But I didn't think that it was going to necessarily go well as he transitions up against these bigger guys at 130. Well, now he's beaten Oscar Valdez substantially by wide margin on the scorecards, and Oscar Valdez wasn't able to slow down that Emmanuel Navarrete avalanche. Oh man, yeah, what a fight. Let me know what you thought in the comments. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are into the fight talk. I'm Woog. Thanks for tuning in.